Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Josh Snipes, and if you're just checking out the channel for the first time, I do all sorts of guides for gameplay. I do operator guides, and now I'm starting to do map guides. They're all going to be in the playlist, so do not be afraid. If this isn't the exact one you're looking for, I'm going to keep pumping out content for you guys. So make sure to check out the playlist that I'll leave in the description, or at least in a card in the top right corner. Anyways, to hop on in, we're going to be going and basically taking a look at the smoke and plant spots on the map of Border. Now, Border is a very typical map that you'll get in ranked and even in comp, so I feel like this could be very useful, and hopefully this video won't be too long because Border doesn't have too many sites, but there's a lot of different ways that you can attack these sites. But I'm just going to go and run through the basics like how I did on Bank. But without further ado, let's jump right into Border. So the first one we're going to be taking a look at is our Armory locker site, and basically we're going to be taking a first jump at the archive site on the other side. Now there are two default plant spots. The one you can really plant in is the doorway or in the top corner that you see inside of archives. The top corner is a little more risky because someone can push in and shoot you, versus the doorway they have to push pretty far to come get you. But a lot of times people will usually C4 or just throw smoke grenades at a default spot at that top X that I put. So sometimes planting in the corner is a pretty good idea. But basically what you're planning on doing, it depends where you're planting. If you're gonna plant behind the bomb, you want to smoke off the doorway, and if there's a rotation hole or any sort of peek through hole, you want to do that also, because you don't want anyone to be able to see you. Sometimes you can smoke off fountain depending on your layout of the site. It's really up to what the other team is doing and how you're planning on countering that. Now, if you're going to plant at the top X, really all you need to do is smoke off the doorway, and if you have control of the rest of archives, say if you don't have anyone in fountain, and you don't have anyone in archives, and you know that for sure, you don't have to worry about it as much. So you can smoke it, but you don't have to. But you definitely want to firebolt and smoke the doorway that goes from Armory and lockers into archives. So make sure that you're doing that. And normally if someone's planting on that top X, you'll usually have someone on vent windows or at least in fountain to watch the doorway in case anyone pushes on through. So just be wary of that and you'll do fine. Now, the other site that we're going to take a look at is Armory lockers. There's only two default plant spots that are typically used when you play on this. The top one is a lot harder to get to, but if you smoke it off correctly and you make sure that you have someone covering you, it's a very strong plant spot, because if someone tries to defuse it, it's super hard to defuse because you're completely exposed, versus the other one that's the bottom. It's easier to defuse because you can punch a hole through the wall inside the little office and actually start defusing. So that can become a problem if you're not paying attention, but definitely make sure to take a look at all these default spots, and I'll make sure to give you guys a run through right now. So we're going to be heading on over to archives, and we're going to be starting from the east side. This is a pretty typical take that you might see. They might push on through office and try to get control of fountain and then take it on through further. Sometimes you might see a rush plant on this doorway also, but just be wary of that. So you want to try putting someone on vents. This is a great crossfire to have and good cover to have if you're going to plant inside the doorway. The other plant spot is right behind this bomb. Normally you'll turn your back and you have to open this wall for this to be viable. You don't necessarily have to, but it makes it a lot easier to hold because literally there's two reinforcements on that wall, so you don't need to worry about it. So this is going to be seeing the smoke spots basically, and I use these smoke spots every so often, smoking the doorway in case you don't have control of fountain, smoking that door in case you don't have control of Armory lockers. These are great smoke spots, and see how much it cuts off. You have to push over the desk or at least push through the smoke, and there's no way for you to counter it because you can't see. Every so often in front of the wall that you just saw straight ahead of me, they might have holes or anything like that to throw stuff over. So just be wary of that, because C4s and smoke grenades do come on over from that. Sometimes you might have a C4 from below or holes from below and able to shoot someone planting. So this is that third plant spot I was talking about, where if you have control of fountain, this is actually a very strong plant spot because it's very hard to take out unless someone pushes on through. Next, we're going to be going into Armory and lockers. Now, if you're going to be taking this site, you need to clear out CCTV and possibly clear out from below. Normally, there'll be someone on half wall or there'll be bandit batteries, so maybe sending a buck below to clear all that stuff out. Make your life a lot easier. So me shooting this is just demonstrating that you need to open this wall for this to really work. Usually a thermite or Hibana will be able to do the trick. You won't really need a Maverick because Maverick won't be able to open enough for you to really hold down this site, but I'm sure there's a way where you could do it with Maverick. Make sure you open this wall though, and then you can set yourself up to plant. Again, Capital's not going to be the one planting, he's going to be the one smoking, so basically these are the smoke spots that you want to do. Put one in between lockers, which is also called sandwich, and you can also put one on the exact bomb site. So those are the two plant spots you saw me ping right there. So setting a smoke down, and you're gonna basically go for a long plant, and if you can do this and have someone watch over you, it's a very strong plant spot, especially because you might see C4s go on the other default spot. So just make sure though that you're paying attention to who's below, and maybe clear out half wall before you try and do this, because you could end up getting killed for it. Now we're going to be heading on over to ventilation and workshop. Now this is typically the first or second site that you'll see teams bring out. The other two sites aren't too good, so a lot of times vents will end up being first or second. It really just depends on what rotation your enemy is trying to do on their defense, but a lot of times this is basically the smokes that you'll end up using depending on what your exact attack plan is. Now looking at ventilation first, you're gonna have two smoke spots. The top one is a typical rotate hole that you'll normally see that a lot of teams make, because there's an indestructible shelf right there that pretty much guards that from the window. So that is a very typical rotation hole, and you can actually shoot that smoke into the site from outside the double doors. So it's a pretty good smoke spot to have, especially if you can do a fire arrow on it. Also, it's a smart smoke spot to have. Now the second one, I was looking at this and trying to debate how exactly you should smoke this. If you have someone in customs, only smoke the ventilation door, but if you don't have anyone in customs to kind of watch that double door that goes up to Armory stairs, you want to make sure that you have a smoke that pretty much covers both of those doors. So maybe shoot it on the ground in between both those doors. Try to get as much coverage as you can in that hallway, because you don't want anyone to push on through and try to get you. Now, there's two default spots that you can do. You can do it close to the wall, or you can do it right behind the desk. Right behind the desk is a little risky, because if you can get shot in the head still, you don't bend down far enough to go completely under the desk. But if you do it close to the wall, it's kind of the same thing. A lot of teams will leave that wall soft, so you might get C4 and it might get impacted or shot pre-fired in general. So just be wary of that, but make sure that you're guarding the rotation hole. That's the biggest thing that a lot of teams will try to go through. And if you don't already, go and make sure that you have upstairs control, because having upstairs control, especially on this site specifically, is very useful, because you can cut off a lot of rotations from upstairs. Now moving over to workshop, this is also an interesting spot that you can take. A lot of teams, this honestly relies on you taking upstairs again and then getting control of that, but you're typically going to have your hard breacher come on through tellers and go into bathroom and open up the walls. You might open up the top panel that you see, and then maybe the panel that faces the teller's door. So those are two typical panels that you might see, and you normally will plant behind sort of the stack that's in the middle of the room, because that's really the only cover you have. Or if you can get into that south doorway and plant in the corner, that's a really good plant spot too, because it's easy to cover and it's really, really hard to get to as a defender, because there's no cover for you to even get through or walk through to be able to get there. So without further ado, let me demonstrate exactly how to do all of these plants on vents and works. So we're going to be heading on over to ventilation room first, just to demonstrate to you guys where to plant, how to plant, all that good stuff. So a lot of times the bomb ends up being right here, and you basically have no cover inside this room, so you need to be careful. This is the first plant spot that I was explaining behind this desk. You do bend down a little bit, but you don't bend down a lot. This is also the second spot that I was talking about. Again, this is soft wall sometimes, so just be careful with that. So that usually is a rotation hole that a lot of people will use. And then usually people might come through the doorway or through the double doors right here. So again, smoke off the double doorway and this doorway if you can, if you don't have anyone in customs. But basically that's a simple plant that you would normally do on the site. Now taking a look at workshop, I do come in from the wrong side. Normally you come in through bathroom and tellers, but this is, I guess, just for the explanation of it, because I don't have a soft breach, so I can't open this up. But normally you'd want to open this panel on up, and then you would want to open the panel that's on the far southeast side. Either you want to make sure though that you open these panels up. It creates a lot of crossfire and it opens up the site a lot for the attackers. So just make sure. So normally you want to smoke off in between these two pillars you see right here, and you're going to plant behind this blue stack that's right here. So basically that's the first plant spot. The second one is right here, and especially with the lighting, the way the light shines across the site, it makes it kind of hard to see, honestly. I try to go for this plant spot typically, but there are two different plant spots depending on what you're holding above, where you're holding, and how you open up this site. But basically, those are the plant spots for workshop. Now we're moving on to customs and supply room. This is typically the third site that people usually go to. They don't usually go to bathroom and tellers. Basically, if you are gonna play this site, you need to hold upstairs. Develop something to hold upstairs a lot easier, because once those hatches get open, it is so hard to hold that main custom site and even supply room, because you can open up so much of the floor and get so much control so easily. So make sure you hold upstairs pretty well. A lot of the times you end up having a rotation hatch, so that way you can just fall down if you need to and you don't have to lose any bodies upstairs. But just make sure that you're trying to either reinforce the hatch or reinforce and kaid the hatch, because that's the only real way that you're gonna really hold this site down, because if you lose upstairs too quickly, you're gonna be in a lot of trouble. But taking a look at the supply room take first, you see where that top smoke is. There's usually a rotation hole or some sort of hole for people to shoot you through or throw C4s through or smokes through, anything like that that can harm you. Basically, you want to smoke that off first, and then also see where that bottom smoke is. That's going to be the doorway that heads into supply room. You might have someone sitting behind that stack that you see there on the left. There is a drone hole, so if you see someone there, you can either capital bolt them through the drone hole or just capital bolt them through the window that you see at the top, or that right above that X, because your capital bolts, the fire bolts now fall, so it's a lot easier to clear someone out of there. But basically, you're going to be planting in the open, so you got to be careful and make sure someone's covering you. But basically, you're going to plant on that X and then hope to God that no one flanks you, that no one pushes on through, because this is probably the most vulnerable spot that you can have, I think, in all the plant sites on the map. Next, we're going to be heading over to customs. Now, there are 2 plant spots for this that I've seen people use. There's also a couple of differences on the smokes, but these are 2 basic smokes just for the explanation. So you want to smoke in between the metal detector and right on the other side of the metal detector, and sort of that table that's right there. Basically, this will cover half the site, and then you want to typically have someone covering you so they can watch the window and they can be able to shoot anyone that might come on through and try to shoot you. But the other plant spot is behind, on top of a desk. Now, this is a little more risky to get into because you have to run through the doorway. I guess you could run from the double doors in the main entrance, but that doesn't typically happen. But you want to make sure that you have these reinforced walls open. Don't let anyone hold it down. You want to make sure your thermite or Hibana is able to open this on up, because opening this site really makes it a lot easier to take. So just make sure you're doing that. And right now, I'm going to demonstrate to you how exactly to take this site. So for the first one, we're going to be going on over to supply room, trying to get this plant down as quickly as possible. Again, this is a very simple plant. Basically, you're going to want to try to smoke off that rotate and smoke off this doorway. There might be someone behind that wooden box you just saw me walk by, but this plant is so simple. But the problem is that there's no cover. So honestly, planting in this spot is probably your best bet, just because of the fact that you have to have someone push out a little bit more to actually shoot you. But that's on it. This is probably one of the hardest sites to plant on, just because of the fact that there's no cover to plant behind. But this is basically where your plant. Now we're going to be heading on over to a customs take. Now you're going to be opening up this wall that you see here on the left. You want to try and open up this panel and maybe one more panel if you can, unless you are going to use that thermite for the hatch. But you're going to basically plant behind this metal desk that you see right here. It's completely bulletproof, so this is the safest spot to plant. You can also plant behind on top of this desk, but this is a little bit more risky because it's kind of hard to get up on. You have to go through double doorway or through the thermite hole, so just be wary of that. You maybe want to plant just around it, but I usually want to go for this desk take. Now these are the 2 smokes that I was talking about. You might want to smoke off the window going into this little office right here, but it really comes down to how you plan on taking it and who's watching your flank and what they're actually watching. So this is going to be the last site. This is your bathroom teller's take. A lot of teams don't typically go here. I would say this is usually probably one of the least played sites on this map, just because of the fact that it's just so hard to hold. Especially because of the fact that there's no soft wall in between bathroom and tellers. There's only that hard wall where you see that X on the top. But basically what you want to do is you're going to take this from the top down. You're going to have to clear out up top on either site that you plan on taking, because you can shoot above it and hold it down from up there. So you want to make sure you try to clear it out from up top. But looking at bathroom first, if you can get in through workshop, that's probably your best bet, because you can smoke off that top smoke that you see and then the smoke that's in the double doorway all the way at the bottom, you're just gonna plant behind where you see that X, because there's a hard wall right there. You can't get shot through or pre-fire through. Someone has to jump over and actually come get you, or at least go around where the little opening is. Now looking at tellers, this is probably one of the most basic plant spots. You really want to go for that right X, because you can plant behind the vending machine and have someone cover you at the same time. You want to open up that wall where you see that top X. You want to open that up, because that way you can create crossfires and hold down a cover fire as someone's going for the plant. Now the smokes are pretty typical too. You want to smoke the doorway, and you want to try to smoke in between the desk and the wall, because that'll create pretty much a wall of smoke that someone has to push through and throw C4 through. But there's no way for you to stop a C4 from coming through, because that's a very default spot that people try to plant on. So just try to bait out the C4s and any smokes that the other team might be using. But without further ado, we're going to show you the last demonstration for the last spot on this map. So taking a look at the teller's take, you're going to be opening up this window, and basically this whole wall right here needs to be open. You want to usually typically use a thermite charge, but Hibana will do the trick. It's just not as open as you maybe would want it. So you're going to plant behind the vending machine right here, and you're going to smoke off that doorway straight in front of you, and you're going to try and smoke off in between the desk and the wall that's right here. These are good plant spots or smoke spots that you really want to do. It creates a lot of cover, and that's basically it for the smoke spot and plant spot on this site. So without further ado, last site that I'm going to be showing you guys, you also obviously want to come in through workshop. Make sure you have top control though also, but you're typically going to come in through workshop. You're going to open up this panel right here in order to get inside. Normally these are all reinforced, so you do have to bring a hard breacher. You do need to get through this somehow, so just make sure that you are aware of that when you're trying to take this site. Now you're going to plant inside this little half wall, I would call it. And basically you're going to smoke that long double door and then smoke the door right in front of you. This will create a lot of good cover, and then the rotation hole that you make will also provide that. Anyways guys, I hope you guys liked this video. I wanted to make sure that I could show this all to you guys. Let me know if you have another map that you want to see, and this is going to be Josh Snipes signing off.